Back once again for another week of the Blue Corner. My name is Dennis, and here we are once again. Before we get started, just obviously remember to hit that subscribe and ring that bell. But we last week we were lucky enough to have Tyson on the show, and we're moving on from one boxer to another. Some would probably say at the moment our next guest is Australia's golden child. He's had a pretty successful campaign earlier this year at the, I don't even know if we're going to call it Tokyo 2020 or if it's Tokyo 2021. But yeah, he's obviously a boxer that medaled, and I believe it's the first medal we've received in the better part of 3 decades. I'm talking about none other than Harry Garside himself. How have you been? How has life been since you've returned to Australia? And how's lockdown been treating you?
Firstly, thanks for having me on, mate. Since the Olympics, it's been good. This is like the longest break that I've had off boxing. You put a lot of time and energy and effort into the Olympic Games, and I tried for the Rio Olympics, and there was 5 years of just hard training. Pretty much didn't have any breaks in that time, and just really enjoying some downtime at the moment. Always staying active and staying fit. But since the games, it's been really nice. Like spending a bit of time with my family, with my partner. I'm currently up in Sydney. My home is usually Melbourne, so it's going really well, mate. I'm keen to get back into the gym though, and boxing's all I know, so I'm keen to get back into it.
But I also see that you're wearing something on your hand at the moment. So is that going to delay your return to the gym?
So I had surgery on my hand. I did the injury in March 2021, so earlier this year, and I knew the doctor said you pretty much had to get surgery, but I knew that I wasn't going to get it prior to the Olympics, or else it would have put me back 3 to 6 months. So had to sort of just manage it. Didn't affect me whatsoever throughout. I couldn't throw it for 3 months, which is kind of annoying, but the last month of training prior to the Olympics, I actually was able to spar and actually do contact stuff. So it was a great preparation. It would have been ideal if I could throw it those 3 months, but that last month was all I needed, really, I thought. Got surgery after, and the doctor says 3 to 6 months, but hopefully maybe back in the gym very soon. I know Freedom Day is next week in Sydney, so I'll be doing one-handed stuff next week at least.
Well, fingers crossed, right? Because when we say Freedom Day, the original date was the 18th. Then now there's talks of the 11th. But I've also read articles now saying that 25th because we're waiting for 80%. So I'm kind of like, and now that we've lost Gladys, I really don't know what's going on, right? Like it's a bit all up in the air. But was it one of those cases that, as you said, like in preparation, like did you find having injured your hand like that, were you still able to work on the other hand? Because when it comes to like combat sports athletes, and I deal a lot with MMA as well, and they sometimes talk about that if they can't strike, their wrestling really improves because they focus so much. So I'm not sure which one it is right now, if it's your jab or your cross hand, but was it a case that you were still able to work on the other hand, and did you see some massive improvements on that hand?
Yeah, so it's actually, I always look when I have like a problem or a situation, I always look for the silver lining. I think a lot of high performance athletes and people in high performance environments, we do that. And I was just constantly asking, like, what is the universe trying to teach me right now? And one of the biggest problems that I've had is I drop my lead hand. I'm a southpaw. I drop my right hand often, and I get clocked when I'm boxing southpaws a lot with overhand lefts, or get hit a lot because my right hand is down. So I was just thinking, now's a perfect time, perfect opportunity to really focus and hone in on keeping that hand up, and getting a bit more strength in the shoulder so it's not dropping down deep into a tournament and stuff like that. So there was definitely big improvements in my right hand throughout my preparation because it was all I could throw. There was times, though, that it was burning because I was overusing it. And I was like kind of concerned that I might get like an injury because you overuse and stuff like that, but managed it well. Big improvements in the right hand, and fingers crossed now that when I have the left hand back, I can still improve with that right hand, because it's pretty important. Your jab, keeping your lead hand up, your backhand's like, it's always there, you know what I mean? But everyone uses their backhand heaps. So I was really, really happy that I had that opportunity to really just focus on my right hand.
Nice. And you say you originally tried for the Rio Olympics as well. Like how far along that campaign did you get?
Yeah, so I tried. So I won the national title. I was only 18 at the time, and then we went to China for the Asian qualifiers, Asia Oceania qualifiers, and I won one fight and then lost to China, and then we went to Azerbaijan for the world qualifier, the last chance qualification, and I won two fights, sorry, beat Germany and Korea, and then lost to Turkey in that fight. If I won that fight, I would have went to the Olympics. But looking back, I'm so grateful I didn't make it, to be honest, because I feel like if I did, I probably would have lost in my first fight. And yeah, who knows, like where my boxing would have went after that. But that because I didn't make it and I got really close, busted my ass for the last 5 years and finally got the opportunity to represent Australia.
Nice, nice. And look, I want to take it right back as well to like where you really began this journey, and I believe it was around the age of 9. From what I've read, is and when you originally started. I mean, we'll start right from there. Like, where was the original sort of start in the boxing world, and as to even why you picked up the boxing gloves, I guess.
Yeah, so I started boxing when I was 9. I live in a smaller town on the outskirts of the Melbourne suburbs called Lilydale, and the only gym that we saw, there's gyms in every suburb, but like my suburb of Lilydale, there was a Lilydale boxing gym, youth club, and I just walked in there one day with my mum and my coach Brian Levere, who's still my coach to date. Yeah, he took me in and I fell in love with the sport instantly. I think I initially started it for two different reasons. We actually watched way too many Rocky films when I grew up. My family loved them. And I was like, I was the youngest of three boys, and I sort of didn't get much respect from my two older brothers. They were real blokey, real manly, and I was kind of like more close to my mum and what my mum was doing. And I think I initially just wanted to gain a bit of respect from my brothers, and they were fighting on the footy field, fighting at school, and they were always fighting at home, and I was like not really doing what they were doing, and I think I started it to gain a bit of respect from them, and then fell in love with the sport instantly. So yeah, like it's been a long journey. Still with my coach now. We now train at Pure Boxing in Ringwood, and that's in Melbourne too. So I'll be here between here and Melbourne, Sydney and Melbourne for the rest of my career, I think.
Nice, nice. And as you just mentioned, you were more. I mean, two questions on that. Have you now garnered the respect of your brothers, and also like being the mother's boy, as you said. How hard was it to convince your mum to allow you to pick up, the sport of boxing? I'm sure there's plenty of other sports that she probably would have looked at first.
Yeah, so I've gained the respect from I think both of them, but I definitely couldn't beat up my middle brother. He's got that farm boy strength. He's like doesn't go to gym, doesn't do any training, but he's one of the strongest men that I've ever come across. But yeah, my oldest brother, I meet him wrestle tussle every now and then. But I know when I started boxing, my mum was like because I played all sports, basketball, AFL, cricket, tennis, I'm running, like I loved all sport. And mum's like, why can't you go play basketball or something like that? And it's funny because she really didn't want me to do it, but now she's the loudest one in the crowd when she comes and watches me fight. So it's quite funny to see how much she's changed since I started when I was 9. And she really loves that I do it. She loves the person I become when I do it. And yeah, I'm so grateful I've got like the support of my mum and my dad. So yeah, behind every good athlete, there's always a good team behind him, I think.
And I have to ask, where does the I mean, you reek of positive energy, right? And I need to know where that comes from. And the only reason I ask that is obviously, like I mean, the more I read about yourself and obviously hear from you is like you have these setbacks, right? But then you stay with it, you persevere, and you try to overcome them, right? Like, I mean, I think the original thing that I read was, even though you started at 9, you weren't actually allowed to jump into any sort of ring until you were 12. So that's 3 long years, and for a kid of that age, that can actually seem like a lifetime. Like, as you said, you didn't make the Olympics, but rather than throwing in the towel, obviously you continued on, and just things like that. I mean, even at I think you had a pretty on-off record to begin with as well, right? Like, it wasn't the cleanest record as well. Like there was somewhere that I read something that you lost 10 out of your first 18 and stuff like that, but obviously you stuck your heels in and you decided to keep going forward. Where does that energy come from?
Yeah, I think there's definitely numerous parts to like why I stayed in the sport. There's like the element of like I truly love the sport with all my heart, and to be honest, I would quite happily just do boxing because I love it. I like success is just a bonus. I do the sport because of how it makes me feel. I'm a massive overthinker. When I'm inside that ring, the world stops. Like that's the amazing feeling. Then there's also the element of like I was a kid, as I mentioned before, who lacked a little bit of respect from the males in my life, and then you start a sport like boxing, everyone kind of gives you this like identity and respect that you kind of, I don't know if you deserve it just because you do a sport. I don't know if you deserve respect, but it often happens. And I think I love that. Like often as kids, I think we all want, we all want to feel accepted, respected. And yeah, I always loved I'm addicted to the feeling of being different, unique, and not many people in my area did boxing. And I love that. And so there's numerous things as to why I stayed in when I was early. And then I think like when I got so close at the Rio trials, like it was just like I can actually maybe do this, and it's quite amazing. Like I look back now in my life, and I was 18 at the time. I honestly went to the both Asian qualifiers and the world qualifiers before the Olympics, and I honestly thought that I could win them. You know what I mean? I look back now, I'm thinking that was being very disrespectful to the top athletes at the time. I look back now, and but you mean you kind of like when you're young, you're naive, and you go in there, you're thinking, oh, I can do this and stuff like that. And that was really a moment when I was just like, maybe I can actually win a medal at the Olympics. Obviously, it was gold that I wanted, and bronze wasn't the gold, but like fingers crossed now, mate. Like the next generation are looking at that, going, "We can do this," and fucking oath they can. They can do whatever they put their minds to. Minds to. They just got to believe it. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I also think like, look, I don't think it's being naive at all. Like I always say, especially in combat sports, you have to go in believing that you're going to win, right? Because I kind of say if you go into any sort of fight, with the mindset that you're losing this fight, you've pretty much lost before you even make that walk, right? So I kind of feel like, as I say, you got to have that confidence, otherwise you're in that wrong sport. But speaking of which, I also read that, you know, and I know you obviously have dedicated your life to boxing now, but there was a quote that I saw as well where you said like you would like to see some form of combat sports in all schools, right? Because you think it can really help, I guess, young kids progress further in life. In that sense, how important is, and I will just blanket it, combat sports?
Yeah, I think I can totally understand not integrating boxing. I can understand there'll be a bit of backlash, head trauma, and stuff like that with kids that are growing. But like, imagine introducing judo, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, maybe like sports where there's like you have to bow to your master, you shake. There's a lot of respect and the lessons that they learn about themselves as well, self-confidence, self-love. You got to have respect for yourself, but also you got to have respect for your athlete, your coaches. I just think it would be one of the most fantastic things to integrate into our system. I think when I sometimes I talk to some older people, like my coach and stuff like that, they're like, if you back chatted to a policeman back in their day, the policeman would knock you out or like hit you, you know what I mean, or backhand you, you know what I mean. Like now, people will spit, swear, and it's just like that's just an example. But it's like I feel like a lot of people don't have much respect for authority, don't have much respect for themselves almost in a sense. And I feel like that integrate that I'd hope into their morals and especially at that young age, it's really like pivotal into the person they're going to become later on in life.
And it's crazy because I totally agree with that. Even to the point, as you say, in schooling systems, I remember, you know, if we misbehaved back at school, the teacher would grab you by the arm, take you to the principal's office, and you kind of get dealt with, right? Where these days you can't even do that because the kids know, they'll be like, "You can't touch me," right? Like it's literally, we live in this world now where like all the power has been put onto the kids, and they know it because kids are smart, right? They know it, so they know how to kind of game that system. But I mean, like, also, I mean, with you, I don't know, did you ever go down the wrong path? Because I also read that, like, there was a moment in your life that, and it's one, this is where I feel a little bit bad because it's one that I know probably the least about, but like, I believe, what was it? The Reach Foundation came to your school, and from what I read, that was like a really life altering moment for you. What is it? And I mean, even give them a plug, because as I said, like we know about like the Starlight, we know about like all these foundations, but like as I said, and I apologize for it too. The Reach is probably one of the ones that I know the least about. So what is it that they do, and how did they, like as I say, change your life?
Yeah, I think any organization like similar to Reach about youth and really developing our younger generation. Yeah, Reach entered my school when I was in year 10, I believe. And they ran a school workshop. They did a girls' workshop, so just all the girls in my year level, and they also did a boys' workshop. So I was obviously at the boys' workshop, and that workshop was all about challenging stereotypes. And you often think about males, how we're always doing the dumb shit, always jumping, like you see blokes jumping off fucking roofs into a table and stuff like that. Like you never see girls doing stuff like that. And it's like, why do we have that mindset, like toxic masculinity and stuff like that? And it's half the reason why I painted my nails for the Olympics, was because of what they planted in me, and just challenging stereotypes, and just realizing you don't really have to fit the mold of what society pushes on you about how a male's supposed to act. You can really just like, because I feel a little bit more feminine, as I mentioned at the start of this call. Like I feel a little bit more feminine. I was always a little bit more connected to what my mum was doing, and wasn't really connected to what my brother and my dad were doing. Always out the back in the shed or digging holes and stuff like that. And I was just like, nah, that's not me. And I think just like we're kind of told like, nah, that males are supposed to do this and do that, and it's just like just realizing, no, you can do whatever you want. And yeah, I've been involved with Reach since I was in year 10. Now I like help them run workshops, and they do so much stuff. But I think the key message with the Reach Foundation is just like making young people, giving them the space to explore themselves and realizing their full potential. So it's like that's their two core messages. Just like really giving them a space to speak honestly, try things out. Like, because like think about life as a teenager, how confusing you think it is, and like you think you have a problem when you're a teenager, you think it's the end of the world. And I think Reach just really gives young people a platform to really understand themselves more, ask questions, that there's no dumb questions, and really just explore what they feel inside, because there's a lot going on in their body. Their body's changing, their body's growing, their hormones, everything is sort of moving and stuff like that. So I think it's a really amazing foundation for young people just to explore themselves and really realize their full potential.
Nice, nice. And talking about breaking stereotypes, I mean, obviously you showed the painted fingernails, but like I read as well, or I think it was on the news even, that I mean, two things, that you took up the dance of ballet, and also you were considering wearing a dress to the opening ceremony. Do you want to talk a little about that?
Yeah. So the ballet I've always wanted to really start ballet, and I think like I remember seeing stuff growing up. Danny Green did it. Like he obviously was on Dancing with the Stars too, and Arnold Schwarzenegger did ballet, and James Hurd, who's an AFL footy player, did it. And I've always been really interested in movies that have ballet in them, or gymnastics, or dance and stuff like that. And was always a little bit scared to tell, especially like my dad, he's pretty old fashioned, that I wanted to do ballet and stuff like that. But finally in 2019, builds up the courage. Mum got me a couple of tickets, and I went and started my first few classes, and I fell in love with it. It's really strict, really rigid, very similar to boxing. There's a lot of rules. You can't have chewing gum, can't have your watch on, can't turn your back to the bar. Like there's so many things that are similar, and I absolutely love it. It's just something different, something unique. And I'll probably do this for a long time, mate. I hope that I'm doing this when I'm 40, 50 as well. So, yeah, the dress scenario, it was similar to the nail polish. It was just like I wanted to just like break stereotypes. As I mentioned, I'm addicted to the feeling of being different, unique. The reason why I didn't do it was two reasons. Didn't want to take the spotlight away from the rest of the Australian team, as the opening ceremony is pretty special. And I didn't want to try and seem like I'm grabbing the spotlight. And I also didn't want to offend anyone. I know the world we live in now, people always overanalyze everything and have their opinion on everything. And I know some people probably could have taken that the wrong way. I know my intentions are good. It's just all about like inclusion and just making everyone believe like you can do and be whatever you want to be. You don't have to fit this social construction that the world puts on you and stuff like that. And grateful I didn't do it, because it was just before one of my first fights. I feel like the media could have grabbed that and ran with it a million different ways. And it could have potentially like interfered mentally with me focusing on my job. So grateful I didn't do it, but I got my message across with the nail polish.
Nice, nice. And with the ballet, I'm not sure if it was ballet, but I know another dancer, boxer slash is Lomachenko, right? He's another great that kind of uses it. But was it always ballet for you, or because I mean, when it comes to dance, you've got a lot of other, like, whether it be jazz, whether it be hip hop, whether it be contemporary. Has it always just been ballet for you, or is it the fact that you just wanted to get your dancing shoes on?
Yeah, so I've always been really interested in ballet, and I think probably for boxing, I'm not too sure on other dance. Like, I'm pretty ignorant in that space, but like I really think ballet and boxing work really well together. Once we have Freedom Day, whenever it is in Sydney, I'm definitely going to try and look at starting contemporary and a couple other forms of dance as well as ballet. I just think, like, if you really sit down and think about it, it's getting a lot of like people often talk about me doing it, but I think doing any form of dance for any sport or any activity in life, it's pretty useful. Coordination, technique, different things, movement, mobility. There's so many positive things about dance. And I honestly feel like I'm massive on like the history and stuff like that. And I think like hunters and gatherers, we probably danced and sung. That's how we talked and communicated. And I think it's like one of the most natural things we can do. And yeah, I feel like often our generation now is kind of stood away from that. And I think when you're moving freely and dancing, like it's honestly so liberating and rewarding.
That's true, and I mean, look, as you say, I think ballet. My sister does ballet. Oh, she did. She's a dancer, but she does all dance. And I think one of the major things with ballet is, I guess, it's the strictest form of dance. As you mentioned before, with the rule sets and things like that, and just technique as well. Like, you can't have sloppy technique, right? Ballet's all about having correct posture, having but yeah, man, like, and actually, and one thing, this is like totally on a side dish right now. I wanted to bring up your tattoos as well, because I saw a couple of photos of your tattoos, especially the ones down your leg. Can you kind of like talk to us a little bit about, obviously, the tattoos you have, what they mean to you? I saw, I think, two faces on there that I recognize, but obviously, I'll let you kind of like take the lead on it.
Yeah, so I've got all my favorite fighters. So I've got Muhammad Ali, like one of the greatest of all time. And I love what he stood for outside of the ring. Vasily Lomachenko, Southpaw, and I honestly think he has revolutionized the sport. He's doing these movements, angles, and stuff like that, and I think now young people will be trying that. And it's like in 20 years' time, like the boxing is going to be completely different because all young people are seeing him do that. And yeah, I think he's amazing. Roy Jones Jr., Southpaw, fantastic. Dre, unbelievable. Sugar Ray Leonard, one of my favorites. And Bernard Hopkins, loved the story that he taught himself how to box in jail, and obviously was boxing well into his 50s. So, yeah, just some of my favorites on my leg. Haven't got much more room left to fit any more on, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, to be honest.
No, as I said, I'm a big fan of tattoos, obviously, and I saw that. As I said, it was a total side note, but I just wanted to, obviously, because I was like, damn, that's some nice artwork. So I just obviously wanted to kind of get what you had there. So I mean, look, let's get straight on to the Olympics. How long was the process this time around? I mean, the easy answer to that is 4 years, but like, how long was the actual process for you to I guess, your Olympic campaign? I mean, you mentioned the first lot you missed out on, which was Rio. Was it just straight back to the books and go again, or did you take some time off to reevaluate everything? Or yeah, how long was that process in reality?
Yeah, it was a really, really long process. Like I'm the type of person, I think it's a really valuable thing to do. I feel sometimes when I was younger, like I failed a lot when I was younger, and I felt when I failed, I jumped back up straight away. And often when I did that, I'd make the same mistake again. So I remember after the Rio like failure of not making the Olympics, like I sat down in that darkness and really, I was there for probably like a month, to be honest. I was feeling really flat, but I was really reflecting on like why it didn't work out. It really sucked watching. It didn't suck. Like my best mate Jason Waitley and Daniel Lewis competed at the Olympics. Like it didn't suck, but it sucked like knowing that I could have been there. yeah, so it was like in that time, in that period, I was really reflecting on why I didn't make it and stuff like that. And I know once the Olympics finished, it was like early August or something like that, 2016. Then I just got straight back into work and yeah, was straight back on the front foot and really focusing on making sure that I could do everything in my power to make the Commonwealth Games in 2018. That was the next big goal. And I felt like the Commonwealth Games for me was a massive point that I was like, okay, I can actually do something on the international boxing stage. And yeah, and then after that, it was just training really hard for the next 3 years until the Tokyo trials. And I actually failed twice to make the Tokyo Olympics. I failed in Asia, didn't qualify, and then I actually got given a spot based on my ranking. So it wasn't the way I wanted to qualify, mate, but I just know I needed to bust my ass and ensure that I got a medal to prove that I was supposed to be there. Rather than if I didn't get a medal, I probably would have eaten myself alive for the rest of my life, going like I got given a spot. It's like I didn't actually earn my spot. Do I deserve to be there? And I'm grateful now I can actually look myself in the mirror and go like I deserve to be there, and I know I am capable of doing better than what I did this time as well.
And so I have to ask on that point, like having the original Olympics, as I said at the beginning, I don't know if we call it 2020 or 2021, right? But obviously for a lot of athletes, you know, like there were ups and downs there too. So having that extra year to prepare, like what was it kind of like, I guess at down period, like, oh my God, like, you know, I thought I was going in 2020. Obviously now it's been postponed. We don't know what's happening. Or did you actually like grasp that as in like, well, this gives me another year to obviously prepare for the Olympics? Like, what was that feeling like getting to 2020 and then realizing that you weren't actually able, or, I mean, for a stage there was even probably talks that we're just going to scrap the 2020 Olympics and we'll look to 2024. I don't know. Like, I really don't know about the ins and outs of that. But yeah, as an athlete, how was that moment?
I think so. There was 6 athletes from Australia who qualified for the Olympics, me being one of them, and the other 5 athletes qualified in March 2020. So they had the security that they had already qualified. I was the only one who hadn't qualified. So, like for me, I think my experience to them would have been different. For me, I was pretty stressed out, man. To be honest, like once I found out the last chance qualifier got cancelled, and I was like, so that was we found that out maybe May, and that was supposed to be in early June, and I was just like, oh no, like maybe my Olympic dream's over. I'm not going to make it. Like when's the next opportunity going to be? You know what I mean? So all I could do though, I was pretty flat for a period, mate. Not going to lie, but then all I could do, I remember just like there was a flick in the switch, and I just remember thinking, all I can do right now is slow things down, really work on my craft, and always like stay fit, stay ready. And whenever they give me the opportunity, if they do, I'll be ready, and I will not let this slip to my fingers. And I spent most of the back end of 2020 just really honing in on my technique and my craft and staying fit and I was in a really positive mindset. I'm grateful that Boxing Australia gave me the opportunity to move from Melbourne, which was a heavy lockdown, up into Queensland where I could train, had the freedom of training, the sunshine, took up things like surfing and rock climbing, and really enjoyed those things as well. Good balance from boxing. And yeah, like I was grateful that I had that opportunity in 2020 to actually slow things down, because I feel like often I was just going bullet a gate, like whatever's next, just focusing on training hard, being ready, and never really stopped and worked on my technique as much as what I did last year. And I'm just really grateful that I had that opportunity, to be honest.
Nice. I'm surprised they wouldn't have moved you to the AIS. I get maybe Canberra was in a bit of a lockdown too. I would just think with obviously the national teams, they would send you to the Australian Institute. But when you say you picked up boxing and surfing, so do you consider yourself a surfer now? How good are you? And I only ask because like I've tried a couple of times. My best mate's like an avid surfer, and like, you know, I'm good at getting out. Um, if I get up on the board, I'm okay because I do quite a bit of snowboarding. But
Yeah.
like getting up on the board is probably the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, I haven't surfed because of my hand. I haven't surfed pretty much most of this year. Maybe early this year I was surfing. But yeah, I'm pretty keen to get back out there, mate. I was starting to get some like big success early this year and late last year. I was getting up on most waves. I have a long foam board, so it's like they're the easiest boards to get up on. Yeah, like I was really loving the progress. I feel like the mindset with surfing is very similar to combat sport, because the ocean always wins. And I feel like when you're coming up against, so it's like you're very vulnerable in that sense. Like you're never going to beat the ocean. The ocean definitely was eating me up, rolling me. I was feeling very vulnerable in that sense. And I feel like it's the exact same when you jump in a ring or on a mat. For combat sport, it's just like you're very vulnerable. So that's why I think I really love it. And it's like real humbling when you're just getting tossed and turned by each wave and you're having no success getting up. And I actually really love being out in the water, and especially being on the Gold Coast. Like the water temperature there is like 22, 23 degrees or something like that. So it's unreal.
So what is it with you, like, wanting to put yourself in these vulnerable positions? Because you've made a big case of it that, like, I don't know if you do it on a monthly basis or whatnot, but like you set yourself tasks. As we spoke before that we jumped on the podcast, one of the tasks was to get rid of all social, or not to get rid of all social media, but to get rid of all technology for a month. I believe when you went to the Olympics, you made, was it a bet or just a task or something, that you wouldn't talk to someone for 72 hours or something like that? What is it with these things that you kind of challenge yourself with?
I think it's just like to make life interesting, but I've always noticed each challenge. I've been doing it since the start of 2019, so over 2.5 years now, and absolutely love it. Like it's a really, really hard challenge, and each challenge, whether they're hard or not, but they all make me uncomfortable in different ways. And each challenge, I learned something new about myself. So, for instance, the one before the Olympics where I couldn't talk for 50 hours, that was really hard. And I'm a massive talker. I love talking, and um, honestly, halfway through that challenge, I felt like I was going to implode. Like I was like about to explode because I couldn't express myself. But it also made me realize, like, sometimes I need to shut up, because when I wasn't talking, it's like the people in the group with like the wallflowers or the people who sit back a little bit more, they were interjecting more because they had to fill that silence or fill that space. So it gave them the opportunity to express themselves. And as I mentioned, each challenge, I've done so many different ones. Each challenge, I learned something new, and it's like really rewarding. And I think it's just that growth mindset. Like I just have a really big growth mindset. I really want to be successful, not just in boxing, but I want to be happy in my own skin, and I want to be successful outside of boxing too. And I think having growth mindset or doing challenges like I'm doing, I think it's just going to help you grow as a person, and then as well as an athlete.
And out of all the challenges you've set yourself, which one would you consider the hardest? Like, and is there any that you kind of failed at? Like, and when I say failed, I don't mean like miserably fail at, but like, for instance, like even the talking one, did you let a word slip within the 50 hours? Or, so yeah, like, as I say, which one did you find the most difficult, and have you failed at any?
Yeah, so the most difficult was the one I did actually last month. I aimed to do 12-hour straight meditation. That was like really challenging. I meditate daily, but I've done an hour prior to the Olympics. I was doing consecutive hour days. And I was in a positive mindset, and I was able to do that hour really well. It obviously took its time sometimes, but I was very impatient. But I did 4 hours last month, and I actually failed. I couldn't go any further. There was like, I think post the Olympics, my mindset's a little bit different. I'm not going to lie, a little bit like you can't go from a massive high. You have to sort of come down naturally. And I think I'm a little bit below 50% at the moment. And probably because I'm not training normally as well and stuff like that. And I just like that meditation was really hard. And I pulled the pin at 4 hours. It made me super uncomfortable. And I'll complete it one day, but last month, or that when I did it, it just wasn't that day. So other ones that I found really hard, public reading. Do you remember? I don't know. I'm half illiterate, and I remember being at school, and the teacher would go, "Harry, you're reading next," and I just remember going, "Fuck this!" Like I'd be sweating hard, my palms, my forehead, my saliva in my mouth, and would always just take the piss because I struggled to read, and I often hated that feeling. If you screw up, then people are laughing at you. So I did this challenge where I just hijacked a meeting at the Australian Institute of Sport. I walk into this random room. I see there's a few people in there, and I walk in and I look up, and there's just like 60 blokes, no females. I'm like, oh no. And they're like young, they're about 21. I'm thinking, Jesus, why did I pick this room? And I tell them what I'm doing, and I just opened a random page to this book that I was reading and just read the page, and I screwed up a few times, and it made me feel really uncomfortable. But yeah, that feeling after achieving that, like I honestly felt like I could run through a brick wall.
That's crazy. And I was the same at school. I even went as far to anytime I knew that there was some sort of like, thing that you had to present a project that you'd done or anything like that. Literally, those were the days I'd call in sick. And if my teacher would reschedule it like to the following Wednesday, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm sick next Wednesday too. Like literally, I did everything I possibly could to avoid public speaking. It is, but I think it's also tough at school, as you say, because kids laugh at you. But I think it's also the engagement, because I kind of feel like that plays on you as well. Because I mean, if you're public speaking to an audience and they're engaged in what you're saying, I think that's a lot easier than, as I say, standing in front of the class where every other kid, they don't care. They know we're just doing this because it's a formality. And so you kind of feel like, in some degree, you feel like an idiot, right? Because you're like, I'm just talking, no one's paying any attention. Like, what am I even doing up here, right? And I think that's the tough one there. Well, it was for me anyway. Because same thing now, if you're, say, in a business sense, in a meeting or whatever, and you have to present in front of your colleagues, but those colleagues are tuned in, I find that's a lot easier than, as I say, doing something back at school.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I was actually having this discussion with my girlfriend the other day. Like, I feel like the system that we have for schooling, it's like I wish it was more focused on like creating good humans rather than good students. Like really developing like knowledge and like education for like say young men and teaching them like about aggression and emotional control I'm not sure about, I'm obviously not a female, but like for female maybe talking to them about like jealousy or like just really like emotional intelligence and creating good humans rather than creating good students. Because I don't know, I just feel like the school system, I often got shamed a lot by teachers saying that I was dumb or that I wouldn't do anything in my life and stuff like that. And I'm like I look back now, I'm thinking some people would hear that and then they would actually believe that. Like I'm lucky that I'm the complete opposite. I heard that, I'm like, all right, I'll do it in spite of you then. You know what I mean? Like I was that type of attitude and I still am. But I can imagine if a teacher would shame some people, those people would start telling them that, oh, maybe I am dumb or maybe I am stupid or maybe I'm not going to do anything in my life. And I just think the system, like it just could be so much better. I think anyway.
I totally agree. And on that point, it's like if you get told something, or like if you're told you're stupid once, that's fine. And not even at school, like it could be a partner, it could be whatever. Like you kind of take that on the shoulder and be done with it. But if you're told it multiple times, you start to believe in that, right? Like your mind starts to go, well, maybe I am, I've been told this like numerous times now. And I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, but I think on this kind of discussion, one thing that you should really look at is there's a TED talk by Ken Robinson. It's an old one. I think it's like maybe 15 years old. And it talks about do schools squash creativity? And he talks about literally how the system has been set up, that it's all about like maths, English, science, and then you have like your drama, your dance, your this and that. And he talks about that we now live in a world where we probably rely more on the drama and stuff to entertain millions of people than we do on people with maths degrees, right? Because now we have calculators, now we have computers, we don't need all of this. But he talks about how the system was set up, when it was set up, and how it hasn't changed over the years. And it's like a really interesting kind of like, as I say, like way of looking at it. And even to the point, like if you read some of the comments on that TED talk, like you literally have teachers going, I've changed my mentality and my methods to teaching kids after watching this TED talk. It's incredible. Like just on a side note, so if you get like 20 minutes, I say go check it out. But back to the Olympic campaign. So when did you know you finally made the team? How does that all work? Do you get like a phone call from someone, or does your coach get a phone call and he tells you? Like what do you remember the moment you realized you're going to Tokyo?
Yeah, so for the other Australian athletes who qualified, they knew once they won their fight at the Asian qualifiers. So they knew. I was the only one who this wouldn't normally happen, but because of COVID, the world qualifier got cancelled, and they were giving out these spots to the highest ranked athletes who hadn't qualified, and I was one of them. So I remember exactly where I was. I was on the border of New South Wales and Victoria, because Victoria was going into a 5-day lockdown, and I couldn't risk being locked down again. Being in 2021, I'm thinking this is the Olympic year. I have to really focus on being prepared, being ready. So I just drove up to the border, and I was just waiting to see what Dan Andrews was going to do. And I remember I was by myself, and Coach Kevin, the national coach, gave me a message, and I just remember dropping to the floor and just bawling my eyes out, mate. Like, this is something that I failed at to make 5 times, and it's like I finally get the opportunities to represent the country I love to bits at the biggest sporting event possible. And yeah, it was like really overwhelmed. I was really grateful that I was by myself, could really just embrace that feeling by myself. And yeah, and then I thought, like, Dan Andrews didn't extend the lockdown, I could go back down to Melbourne after the 5 days, and went home and saw my family and gave them all a kiss and a cuddle. And yeah, so that was in like February, and then I think we left like early March to go up to the Gold Coast and start preparation. So it was pretty much almost instantly after I found out I was in camp training for the biggest event ever.
And was there any kind of like fear about traveling at that point in time? Because obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, I guess, and you know it's a difference. Like, because as I say, I deal with quite a few fighters, and they'll go over to say fight in the US, but it's like literally them flying over there, having a fight, and coming back. Where with the Olympics, it's a little different because you've got so many athletes coming from so many different countries. Was there ever like a thought in your mind where you're like, like, as much as I want to do the Olympics, maybe this isn't the right time to be doing it?
Never once. I'm like I can understand people's stresses and stuff like that with COVID, but I'm like a firm believer. Um, like, it's like I'm young, fit, healthy. Obviously, do not want to catch COVID at all. But like when we come back, we're going to do the 2-week quarantine, get tested every day. We're getting tested every day in the village. But I'm a firm believer. Like, I'm fit, I'm healthy. Like, I could almost bet my life I can catch COVID and I'll beat it. You know what I mean? Like, and I got the jab because we kind of got pressured into getting it prior to the Olympics. They definitely pressured us to get it, and I'm okay. I couldn't really care less. But it's just like I don't know why we're trying to cheat death. It's like a natural thing of humanity. It's like we're often just trying to cheat death when it's like I feel maybe Mother Nature's creating this to make overpopulation's a massive problem in this world, and it's one of our biggest problems when you really think about it. And I just think, I don't know, we're at the moment, like, we should be more encouraging, like, being fit, healthy, training often, getting vitamin D, getting fresh air, looking after yourself rather than getting a jab. You know what I mean? Like, that's my philosophy. Get the jab if you're really scared. I couldn't care less what you do, but I just think we should be really promoting like being fit, being healthy. Because I know if I caught COVID, I'd be fine. The only problem is I wouldn't want to pass it on to a family member or anything like that, which I totally understand. So, but I knew when we come back, we're going to do 2-week quarantine, get tested like 4 times in quarantine, get tested every day when we're in overseas in Japan. So I knew that. Yeah, the only thing is, like, I wouldn't want to pass it on to someone in my family who would be more vulnerable for sure.
No, no doubt, no doubt. And look, I feel the same. I feel like if you're generally living a healthy lifestyle, there's a pretty good chance that you know you'll just kind of sit it out like you do with most things. And you know, I'm one of those people where I'm just saying I'd like to give people the choice. That's kind of like, once again, I'm the same as you. I don't. If you want to get the jab, get the jab. If you don't want to get the jab, that's on you.
Yeah.
Know the. I always say know the risks, though, right? Like, I don't want you to say I'm not going to get the jab and then end up in hospital and then like cry about it, right? Like, if you've decided to go down that path, you know, it's on you. And I just think that people should be able to make the choice and literally live with their decision, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, I think that too.
But on that, so you finally get over there. Did they take the whole team over on one flight, or was it multiple trips? You know, like, did they split the team up to try to, like, how does it all work? Like, was there social distancing on the flight? Like, even in the Olympic Village, is there social distancing? How does that all work?
Yeah, so they had a charter flight from Cairns, I believe it was. But like, we, for the boxing preparation, we went to America prior. So I was in America for 3 and a bit weeks. And then we went to Japan early, a place called Miyazaki, which is 2 hours south of Tokyo, sorry. So we went there, and we were training there. So then we went straight from Miyazaki into Tokyo. So we went with the Australian team. I give it to the Japanese people. They're really ordered and structured and like they handled it really well. Like there was a lot going on and it was really smooth. When we got to the Olympic Village, I personally thought it was going to be a bit stricter. Wasn't that strict. We got tested every day. But actually, not going to lie, I feel like Australia, because of the country we are, we're very honest. We were getting tested every day, and maybe a couple other big countries like Great Britain or USA were, but I feel like most countries weren't really getting tested. Like there wasn't like it wasn't like forced, and stuff like that. But like to be honest, I don't think there was a breakout in the village. There was maybe one or two like little hiccups, but it wasn't too bad. We're pretty sorry about that. Sirens.
They probably realised that you're in Sydney and you should be in Melbourne.
100%. I've jumped the board on that. Yeah, so I think there wasn't really. I don't watch the news because I think it's depressing. So I don't watch any of the news outlets or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure there wasn't a COVID outbreak, or I didn't hear of it at least.
Yeah, I think they said there was something to do with the athletics or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. I think, but once again, I don't think there was an outbreak. There was like someone tested positive or whatever, and then they put certain athletes back into kind of like a lockdown until they could totally clear it out. But was it? I mean, even with that, was it? So you get over there, they still run it the way they would normally run it. And what I mean by that is they obviously have the opening ceremony and things like that. And like in that instance, what was that sensation like? Was it what you thought it would be, or the fact that it was like in an empty stadium, was it kind of eerie in a sense doing the whole, as I say, the whole opening ceremony, and even like, not the opening ceremony, even like the actual arenas, right? Like, whether it be basketball, whether it be athletics, usually you have thousands of people cheering you on, and all of a sudden now you're kind of like competing in these rooms that are now kind of silent. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was definitely like a strange and unique Olympics. To be honest, like every time I compete overseas, unless it was the Commonwealth Games, there's a big crowd. The Asian qualifiers, there's been some places where it's been busy, like there's been a crowd, but like I've fought in Serbia, Bulgaria, like a few other places around the world, and it's like you're honestly fighting in just like a little basketball stadium. There's not many people there, so it honestly just felt like a bit of a normal event, to be honest. Obviously, we knew it was the Olympics deep down, but like walking out the opening ceremony, not gonna lie, opening ceremony was a bit of like it was just more like the novelty of it, but it was like what's the word? It was built up, anticlimax. Yeah, it was definitely was an anticlimax, and I didn't go to the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony. It would have been amazing on home soil because I was fighting the next day, and obviously you're there to compete, you're there to do business, and for me, I'm not there to enjoy myself. I'm there to win medals, simple as that. And yeah, so the opening ceremony was a bit of an anticlimax, but it was still amazing to walk out and know that you've been looking down on your heart and seeing the Olympic rings with the Australian emblem. Like that's really special. And the arena, as I was mentioning before, like no one in there. It's kind of like normal. I hadn't fought in 18 months prior to the Olympics, so I was really grateful that there was no one there, especially for that first fight. Like there was no one there. It was almost just felt like sparring. Really got the cobwebs out. Felt good. Felt relaxed. And then as the tournament went on, I was like, damn, I wish there was a crowd here for, you know what I mean? It would have just had a bit more atmosphere and stuff like that. But for my first fight, I was pretty happy there was no crowd there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because I will say that on a positive is because we were all in lockdown back home, a lot of people were able to tune in and actually watch the Olympics, right? Because usually, you know, it's during the day and most of the times, like, unless you're at school or whatever, a lot of people need to go to work and stuff like that. But like, I mean, I remember we went into lockdown. I'm like, well, thank God the Olympics are on because it actually gives us something. It gives us something to watch, right? So I'm just saying, like, as much as you didn't have those people in the stadium, I think your viewership would have been a lot higher. Because of the same reasons, because of the lockdown. But what was it like with the opening ceremony again? Like how long's that wait? Because like, you know, from a a person that's just viewing it from the outside, you know, like the Olympic ceremony does go because I mean, there's countries there that I've never even heard of. Like, there's obviously, like, I'm like, what country is that? And I'm like Googling, and I'm like, I sort of felt like, are we now turning like cities into countries? Or like, I really was like, damn, there's a lot of countries. So that whole period there, like, do they keep you waiting out the back for that whole time? Or, and you know, do you start to get a little impatient because you're just like, look, let's get on with it? As you say, like, I mean, this is all fun and games in a sense, but like, I'm really here to do a job. And as much as this is a bit of fun, like, I'm kind of like not enjoying this wait. Like, what's that kind of feeling like?
Yeah, I could definitely. It was really hot around there. In like, I couldn't believe how hot Japan was when I was there. Like, really humid, and being around, like, just waiting to walk out. It was really like everyone was sweating, and it was everyone was getting pretty impatient. I felt sorry for Kate Campbell. So most of the swimmers didn't go because they compete early, and I felt sorry for Kate Campbell. She was the flag bearer, and she was yeah, you could tell she was getting a little bit impatient. She was obviously competing soon, but had to do the duty of the country. And yeah, like it was definitely like, all right, like as soon as we marched, like I remember jumping on the first bus and heading back, and just needed to get some sleep. But it was like, as I said, it was amazing, and it was something that, like, I could tell if I ever have kids, I could tell my kids and my grandkids that I did that one day. And like, I'm grateful I did it, but like, as you said, you're there to compete. And as soon as I could leave and get on the bus back to the village and sleep and prepare on whenever my fight was going to be, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, nice. Now, obviously, with the fights, I mean, as I said in the intro, you know, like, I guess we consider you the golden child of boxing right now because, you know, you did medal, and it's been a very, very long time since Australia's seen a medal in the boxing. You did mention, you know, you were going there for gold, and you didn't quite get that, but I mean, you, as I said, you've achieved something that hasn't been achieved, I think, in 30 or 33
Great.
years, something like that. You know, now looking back on it, I know, you know, as you say, originally you were like, well, I really wanted that goal, but now looking back on it, has it sunk in? Like, how are you feeling about what you've accomplished over there?
Yeah, I think like I'll be the first to say it, mate. Like, and I think high performance athletes need to have this mindset, or else, like, it was a failure. The goal was the gold. And I think for me personally, I feel like I've got to have that mindset. If you start lowering your capabilities and accepting something, then I think you're just going to lower your potential. Like, reach for the star, as simple as that, and don't fall for anything shorter. And yeah, like, that was my philosophy, and it still is. Like, it was a failure. I'm proud of myself for numerous reasons. I'm proud of myself for how I handled myself in my preparation. I didn't turn my back on myself once. I showed up to every session, did everything and more of what my coach asked for me. You mean, I was doing numerous things. I cut out coffee for periods, did these challenges, wasn't ejaculating for numerous days, didn't have a warm shower for 2 months or something like that prior to the Olympics. Was doing all these things, and I remember the feeling. I felt it 3 times in my life. That feeling before a major event is when I can look myself in the mirror and know that I've done everything I possibly can to be ready for a moment. Never turn my back on myself once. And that saying, no stone left unturned, people often overuse. Actually knew that I did that, and it was a great feeling. And it's something that feeling is just like, whatever happens now, prior to like, I've kind of already succeeded. Like, I've done everything I possibly could, and it's just left. And that's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of myself because of my preparation, and of course how I handled myself in the ring, as well throughout the Olympics. I felt like I was very respectful and always just try and do what my parents have raised me to be, lift the ropes for my opponents, and always be happy and respectful, and like, always have good manners for the helpers around the village and stuff like that. That's how my parents have raised me. So I'm proud of myself for those two things.
And how do you like the Olympic format? Like, obviously having to fight multiple times throughout the course, and even the fact. I mean, the one thing that struck me was how quickly you guys forced the action. And I guess that's all got to do with the limited rounds, right? Because, like, I watched some of those boxing matches, and it's like literally from that first bell, people are like in and throwing fists, and I'm like, usually you would see people like have that feel out process, right? Like, but they've got a few rounds to do that in. so I kind of feel like the Olympic, because it's 3 rounds, right? With the Olympics, that's it. I kind of feel like you don't have that option to kind of feel things out. So it's you go in there and you bang straight away. And that was the one thing that I really noticed with the Olympic boxing was just like how intense that action was from the word get-go. But as an athlete, do you prefer to have a bit of a feel-out process? Do you like the kind of Olympic format? How does it sit with you?
Yeah, it's like it's I'm just so used to it now. The system now where there's not the point system. With the point system, you could be down 6 rounds going into the 6 points, sorry, going into the third round, and you could still win the fight. In the system now that we've got, if you lose the first 2 rounds, you've lost the fight. Like unlucky, better luck next time. So you know what I mean. And yeah, so I think the system now you need to be a lot more like it's straight from the get go. Make sure you're winning that first round. If you haven't won that first round, you've really got to bust your ass in the next 2 rounds to ensure you've got the fight. But I'm just so used to it. I think me personally, as an athlete, obviously been in the amateur game now for a while, so I'm so used to it. But like, I think I'm an endurance athlete. Love my long distance running. Have always much preferred longer rounds. I know my coach back home, Brian Levier, is a professional coach. Always was boxing 10 rounds, pretty like light sparring, but always boxing longer rounds, not boxing 4 rounds like we do in our preparation or 6 sometimes. So yeah, I think naturally I'm not a massive puncher. I know I've got a lot to work on if I ever turn pro. Um, but I'm excited. I think I'm gonna like my fitness levels are really strong, and I think I'm an endurance athlete. So I think that will definitely be in my favor going into my pro career, whenever it is.
Nice. And I have to ask you, like, and this is not to put anything down on your placement either, but like, did the fact that going into that last fight, because the chances of having a guaranteed medal, did that change the mindset at all? Do you feel like that if it was kind of like the winner gets a medal and the loser doesn't, or something like that, that it would potentially make you more hungry or something? Like, do you feel like changes your mindset, or no? It's business as usual.
Yeah, it's business as usual. To be honest, like that last fight against the Cuban Andy Cruz, it was regardless of when I fought him in the tournament. He's pound for pound one of the best amateur boxers in the world, and I lost before I got in that ring, and it broke my heart. Like you know what I mean like that. I would visualize before every fight, like myself winning, getting my hand raised, or like lifting the rope for them after I've won, or me boxing really well. I could visualize it with every other fight but that one, and it was doing my head in. I was going through an internal battle, and just like maybe deep down, I didn't believe that I was capable of doing it. But like getting in that ring with him, that was the first time I've ever fought him. Getting in that ring with one of the best boxers in the amateur scene at the moment. You mean there was things that were working for me and there was things that weren't working for me, but at least now I can look at that and evolve and grow, and I'm happy I had the opportunity, and fingers crossed if I choose to go to the Olympics in 3 years, or push for it, like if I ever come up against him, like let's hope it's a different outcome, because now I've had the opportunity of beating him. But it like didn't change my mindset. I was there to win, and I think in the third round I made proof of that. Like I knew I lost the fight, but I could have just danced around and not got hit in that third round, not taking any risks, and let him just win the fight. But I'm like, fuck that. I'm here to win, and maybe get a lucky punch if I can. But like went on the front foot, probably took more damage in the third round, but I tried my absolute hardest, and that's all we can do as athletes.
Nice. And I mean, you kind of brought up one of my next questions, which was where to from here? Like, do you see yourself campaigning again for the next Olympics? I mean, or is it a case that you're seriously considering potentially turning pro? Because I did also read somewhere once again that you've mentioned somewhere that which I don't quite understand. This is probably something you can explain a bit more too, where you said your style is more suited for the amateurs than it is for the pros. So I guess there's two parts to this question. Is like, what is next with you? Do you see yourself really campaigning for another Olympics? And then I guess as well with that would be not just to see if you can achieve a higher medal, but also so you can have an Olympics in front of a full crowd, maybe experience the opening ceremony and closing ceremony in a full stadium and things like that. So even for that sense, but Yeah, and why? What do you mean by like your style is matched more to an amateur boxing fight?
Yeah, I think just being in the amateur system for so long, like the last obviously started when I was 12 and then when I was probably 18 and then I started representing Australia and being on the national team, and the national coach is definitely focusing more on an amateur style and fast paced, a lot more technical, I think. I'm not saying professionals isn't, but it's a lot more slower and you can take your time and pick your shots a little bit better. They plant their feet a little bit more, where in the amateurs it's a lot more like kind of like jousting in some sense. And yeah, I think like I know my personality. Anything I put my mind to, like it might take a bit of time, but I can definitely evolve my boxing and turn professional. Like I'm not worried about turning professional in my style. I'm not a massive puncher, and I know that, but I think with good technique, good timing, good fitness, like you can wear blokes out like in the later rounds of a fight. And I will eventually turn pro. And I'm not sure when it's going to be. I think we can do both now with fight amateur and professional. So, yeah, so they've just changed the rule. Changed the rule prior to the Rio Olympics, and Australia is still trying to work it out. No one really knows the rules, to be honest. And yeah, so now you can. There was some fighters at the Tokyo Olympics who were professional, and yeah, I'm just waiting to hear exactly what it is. 24 is a perfect age to turn pro, I think, after having a really successful amateur career. And I probably will. Like now, I just want to make sure that the door's still open for the next Olympics. I probably won't go to the Com Games next year, not too sure. But yeah, just keeping that door open for if I want to like chase that gold medal in 3 years' time for the Paris Olympics.
See, and it's kind of crazy because like that, I hadn't heard of that you could do pro and amateurs at the same time. What I do always say though is that I just think we're at a point now where the Olympics have just got to let pros compete, because when you look at sports like basketball, like you look at the dream team and stuff like that, they're all NBA players. Like, so I'm like, how you can't say they're amateurs, right? So like, I just don't understand why we don't make the Olympics the best of the best, right? Regardless. And I know some people have said, well, no pro's going to want to go to the Olympics because there's no money, because they're prize fighters and there's no money attached to it. And I'm like, cool. Well, if they decide they don't want to, then you go to your next best. And if it ends up being the top amateur fighter, so be it. But I think they should kind of open the doors to just let's see who the best is, right? Like regardless, as I say, if they're pro or amateur, like let's just compete at the highest level. But look, man, we will start to wind it down because, as I said, like, and I know you're busy as well, but like, all in all, in a kind of a kind of a nutshell, like is it a campaign that you have no regrets, and you know, as I say, like, you know, there's so many positives you can take out of it. As you know, there's also the as you said, you would have liked to have placed high or whatever, but I mean, and even to the point, because I know one of your mottos is like you just want to be a good human, and I love that about you as well, right? And as you say, like you always tried to represent the country well while you were over there, whether it be opening the ropes for your opponent, or I think even like you gave up your first class seat or something like that as well on the flight home. So when you look at it, like, is there any regrets to this Olympic campaign, or no regrets at all?
Yeah, no regrets at all. Like I think everything happens for. I'm a massive one. My mum's very spiritual, so yeah, I've always sort of adopted some of her philosophy, and I think the universe works in mysterious ways, and the universe always has a little bit of a plan, and it gives you these opportunities, and I had plenty of opportunities throughout the Olympic campaign, and didn't change anything. I don't regret anything. Like I was the best version of myself and the best I could be prior to the Olympics, and I was ready to whatever life threw at me and the universe threw at me. So I don't regret anything. I wouldn't change anything. I just know now I can evolve. I can be better. I can always grow. And fingers crossed, if it's not me, someone else from Australia can win that elusive gold medal that we've never won in boxing.
Nice, nice. Well, I guess the one thing that we could change as well is probably give you a better welcome once you got back to the country, right? Like I found the way we treated not just yourself but like athletes in general, I thought was pretty rough. When you hear stories about I mean, there was the one story about you obviously having a few friends over or whatever, and you got into a little bit of trouble there too, because we broke COVID rules. Yet the way I see that is like, as you're saying, you were getting tested every day, if not every second day. It's like, come on, let's ease up a little bit. I mean, in past years, we'd give you a ticker tech parade kind of thing, and here you are. You first have to do quarantine. You hear other stories where athletes in Adelaide, they had to do 2 weeks
Twice.
quarantine in Sydney, and then they had to do another 2 weeks once they got back to Adelaide. And I was like, it's a little rough. So I guess, and once again, I guess that would be, another reason to kind of maybe go for the next Olympics again, just purely so you can get that sort of experience. Because I think, and as, once again, I'll blanket this across all stadium. I know a lot of us were really proud about what the Australians were able to achieve, and it just kind of feels a little bad, like having you guys come back and having to endure all of this, where really this is like the highest moment of your life, and you're kind of stuck in a hotel room, kind of like twiddling your thumbs for a minute. So it's a tough one, but as I said, like, yeah, we as a country, we're totally proud. As I said, you've achieved something that we haven't achieved in a very long time, so you should be proud. I definitely want to see where you go next, whether it is the pros, whether it is another Olympic campaign, which I think you still got in you. I know you said you kind of feel like 24 is a good kind of age to turn pro, but I also feel like it's just tough, right? Because at the end of the day, I guess it's also about price fighting and making a nice kind of dollar out of the sport you've chosen as well, which is probably the other thing that kind of weighs up on your mind to actually turn it into a career. But look, we will call it kind of quits. I just want to get a couple of fight picks from you, which I do at the end of every episode as well. Obviously, being that you're in the boxing world, I've got 3 matches. Well, 2 matches and one that I don't even know if it's going ahead or not now. So the first one, which is I'm uncertain on right now, because I did see a post yesterday that it's been cancelled now, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think Lopez Cambosis.
Yeah, do you know, has it been cancelled, or is that a false kind of
I don't,
report?
so I don't think it's been cancelled as such. It's just like the promoters, the fight itself, I don't think it's been cancelled, but the promoters have pulled out. And they were the ones who were offering him like 1.2 million Cambosis. So he was on a decent bloody paddock with that one. So he'd be a bit spewing, but I think the fight is still scheduled to go ahead, just maybe with potential. I'm not sure. They have to do, but I did say that as well. Kind of heartbreaking. Like, I really wanted to see him do well, Cambosis, and see how well he went against one of the best in the world.
Well, and the crazy thing about it is now is because it's been postponed so many times, he's spent so much time over there now, right? Like, and that's where it's really heartbreaking is, once again, he's been away from family and friends for all this time, and now to kind of like have it unfold like this. But the other thing, and that's why I wasn't sure, because like the account that I got it from wasn't like a verified account. So I was kind of like, is this actually, because I haven't seen George post anything about it. So I'm like, is this actually not going ahead, or is it going ahead? I wasn't too sure. So that was, well, then we'll scrap that. We won't get a pick. If you're kind of on that same page that it's not going ahead, there's probably no point to getting a pick. So we'll go to the next one, which is one that's happening up in Queensland, I believe next month, which is obviously Tim Tszyu. He's now fighting Inouye. How do you like that fight for Tim? I assume that you'll be backing Tim in this fight, being the proud Aussie that you are. But like, yeah. So how do you see that fight go down, and who's your pick for that one?
Yeah, definitely Tim. I think he's like, at the start, I won't lie, like I was like, wasn't on the bandwagon like a few years back. I was just thinking like it's his last name, but every fight he's really impressed me, and each fight he's rose to the occasion, and honestly rating him so highly. And I think he is, besides the Maloney's, are boxing really well, and a couple of others, obviously Huni as well. I think he's probably one of our biggest chances to get a world title. And I think the bloke he's fighting, I've only seen little clips of him, but he's bloody massive. He's huge, and he looks pretty tough. And most Japanese blokes, I don't know if he'll stop him, but I think at least he'll go the distance. I just think Tim has got too much skill, and as I said, he's been boxing really well of recent. So fingers crossed he can get the job done, and I think he will for sure.
Nice. And you just brought up Huni. Hey, do you speak to Huni? Because I know that I've seen a post with you guys together. Are you guys on talking terms?
Yeah, no, we're good mates. Real good
So,
mates.
so have you spoken to him since the Olympics? Because I know he was obviously a favourite going over to the Olympics as well, you know, and then he took that fight on with Paul Gallen and broke his hand. Like, how have you spoken to him since then? How has he dealt, obviously missing out on that opportunity himself?
Yeah, I've spoken to him numerous times, and there's been a bit of a roller coaster of emotions that I've noticed, and it was his dream, and it would suck. I can't empathize enough with him. Like it would have been so tough to know that you can't go to the Olympic Games, and he would have been a massive chance to win a medal, if not a gold medal. So, yeah, I think he's still pretty adamant that he's like, oh, sorry, my phone's ringing. He's still really adamant that he wants to really focus on, the Olympics in 2024 and keep that door open, same as similar to me. And yeah, it's heartbreaking, but he's doing really well now. He's back training, and he said potentially he could fight before the year's out next year.
Nice. And look, just in case they call back, we'll get one more fight pick, and as I said, then we'll call it quits. So we obviously got the trilogy fight between the Bronze Bomber and the Gypsy King. You know, obviously the heavyweights, always fun to watch. How do you see that fight? Do you see something in the Bomber that could potentially startle? You know.
Nah, I think the Gypsy King all the way, mate. I love him, and I'm dirty as on Wilder, and I understand it's his life, it's his business, but like he ruined that fight with Anthony Joshua and what's it called, and Fury, the Gypsy King. So like if Wilder didn't like sulk and want the rematch, like they would have definitely probably gone in that direction and maybe chased Joshua Fury's team. So I'm spewing because I said to myself, if Joshua and Fury fought, I was going to fly over to England and watch it. It'd be amazing. Imagine that in Wembley and 90,000 people there, and like what an experience that would have been.
And now with Joshua kind of losing his last match, I kind of feel like that fight is now. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but it's kind of like taking a back seat now, right?
It's not the same.
Yeah. So, and the one thing I don't like about the Bomber is the excuses on the last one, right? Like, I say this with all combat sports, and that's what even like yourself, like what I really appreciate is the honesty, but like where you say you kind of beat yourself, right? And I always say you get two kind of athletes, one that really handles their losses and they accept their losses, and then others that just, you know, come up with multiple reasons to why they lost, but it wasn't them, you know? And I just felt like that last fight where it was like his corner, his water, his walkout suit. I'm like, dude, just accept that you lost the fight and campaign again, you know. But as you said, when it's your career and a lot of money's on the line, I can kind of understand it as well. But look, we're going to call it an end. As I said, I do appreciate you coming on, and I hope Bondi's treating you nicely. We won't tell the Victorian guys that you've jumped the border. But listen, for people that want to like latch onto your kind of career and kind of follow the journey, I don't know, or for people that are even looking into getting the sport of boxing and things like that, maybe like want a bit of advice, what's kind of the best way that people can reach out to you?
Yeah, Instagram is definitely probably the one I use the most, just Harry_Garside. And if you have any questions about boxing or about maybe you've got a kid who wants to start boxing, shoot me a message. I always try my hardest to reply to messages like that. And on Twitter as well, Harry Garside too, and then on Facebook as well, just Harry Garside.
Nice one. Well, look, as I said, I thank you dearly. It's always great to get fresh faces on the podcast, and I hope this is the first of many. I do eventually want to get you back on again. And yeah, as I said, you made us proud. You definitely wore the green and gold really, really well. And yeah, man, thank you for coming on. And until next time, stay blessed.
I'm a one.